Don't ignore this psalm. There comes a moment when words no longer help, not because you don't believe, not because you don't care, but because everything inside you is already exhausted. If you're here right now, this psalm is for when words no longer help. Some pains don't come out as prayers. They come out as silence, as restraint, as holding everything in, because you don't trust your own voice anymore. And Psalm 39 was written exactly in that place, not in victory, not in confidence, but in quiet suffering. This psalm is not loud. It doesn't shout faith. It whispers honesty. So before we read anything, before we explain anything, let's slow down, take a breath in, hold it gently, and release. You don't need to speak right now. You don't need to explain yourself to God. This psalm is for when words no longer help. There are seasons in life where silence becomes a form of survival. You stop talking, not because you have nothing to say, but because saying it feels dangerous. Dangerous to hurt someone. Dangerous to lose control. Dangerous to say the wrong thing and regret it forever. So you hold it in. You smile when you shouldn't. You nod when you disagree. You pray in your head instead of out loud. And slowly, quietly, the pain stays inside. This is the kind of pain Psalm 39 understands. David says, in essence, I kept quiet. I restrained myself. I stayed silent, even from good. Have you ever done that? Held back even the good words, because the bad ones felt too close to the surface? That's not weakness. That's self-control under pressure. But here's the truth no one tells you. Silence can protect you, but it can also trap you. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because silence has become heavier than speech. Some struggles don't show on the outside. You still function. You still show up. You still do what expected. But inside, there's a constant pressure, a tightening, a burning, a weight behind the ribs. David describes it perfectly. My heart grew hot within me. As I meditated, the fire burned. This is emotional compression, when you think you're being strong, by staying quiet. But the silence starts to hurt more than the truth. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because your heart feels like it's on fire, and you don't know how to release it safely. Before we read Psalm 39, understand this. This is not a psalm you rush through. It was written slowly, in restraint, in inner conflict. So don't read it like information. Let it be a mirror. Let it sit with you. Let the pauses speak. I said, I will watch my ways and keep my tongue from sin. I will put a muzzle on my mouth while in the presence of the wicked. This is self-control. This is restraint. This is someone choosing silence, because the environment is unsafe. So I remain utterly silent, not even saying anything good, but my anguish increased. Notice this. Even silence from good words can increase anguish. Even holding back kindness, truth, or prayer can deepen the pain. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and silence has stopped helping too. My heart grew hot within me. While I meditated, the fire burned. Then I spoke with my tongue. This is the breaking point, the moment when silence collapses, not in anger, but in honesty. God is not offended by this moment. He's listening. Here's the quiet lesson of Psalm 39. Holding your tongue is not the same as healing your heart. You can be disciplined and still be wounded. You can be faithful and still be overwhelmed. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because you've been strong for too long. If this feels familiar, stay, because Psalm 39 doesn't end in silence. It ends in perspective, in humility, in a prayer that doesn't need many words. And in the next part, we're going to see what David finally says when he allows himself to speak to God again. If you ever felt like silence was your only option, this psalm is for you. There's a point where the pain is no longer about what happened, but about how long it has been happening. Psalm 39 moves slowly because it is dealing with time, not deadlines, not clocks, but the quiet realization that life keeps moving while you are still trying to hold yourself together. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because time itself has started to feel heavy. After holding back, after restraining his tongue, after feeling the fire burn inside, David finally speaks, not to people, not to his enemies, to God. Show me, Lord, my life's and then number my days. Let me know how fleeting my life is. This is not despair. This is clarity breaking through restraint. This is what happens when silence forces you to confront something deeper. Nothing is permanent, not the pain, not the strength you pretend to have, not even you. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because you started asking questions you never wanted to ask. There is a special kind of anxiety that comes from feeling stuck in the same place for too long. You tell yourself, I'll be okay soon. I just need a little more time. I can hold on. But months pass, years pass, and suddenly you're not just tired. You're wondering how much of your life this season is taking from you. David says, "You have made my days a mere handbreadth. The span of my years is as nothing before you." He's not minimizing life. He's realizing its fragility. And that realization is terrifying when you're suffering quietly. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because time has made the pain feel more urgent. Here's something subtle in Psalm 39. David didn't explode. He didn't lash out. He waited. He restrained himself. But the longer he waited, the louder the question became, is anyone seeing this? Silence is manageable when you believe it's temporary. But when silence stretches on, it starts to feel like invisibility. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because you feel unseen in your restraint. Surely everyone goes around like a mere phantom. In vain they rush about, heaping up wealth without knowing whose it will finally be. This is perspective born from pain. When you're hurting quietly, the noise of the world starts to feel absurd. People rushing, chasing, accumulating, and you're just trying to breathe. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because the world feels loud and your soul feels thin. Today, this looks like being productive while emotionally empty, smiling in meetings while carrying grief, posting "I'm fine" while feeling fragile, staying silent because explaining feels exhausting. You're not weak, you're compressed. Psalm 39 names this experience without dramatizing it. It doesn't rush to comfort. It allows the weight to exist. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because you're tired of pretending time will fix everything. Then comes a quiet shift, not a solution, not relief, but a question. But now, Lord, what do I look for? This is a turning point of Psalm 39, not because the pain is gone, but because the focus changes. From holding it in to deciding where to place hope. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and you're finally ready to stop carrying everything alone. If you've ever reached a point where you stop asking why and start asking where, stay, because in the next part, we'll see where David places his hope when time, silence, and restraint have taken everything else. And it's quieter than you expect. If you're still listening, this psalm is still speaking. There is a moment when you realize something quietly. You cannot carry this alone anymore, not because you failed, not because you're weak, but because silence has reached its limit. Psalm 39 arrives exactly here, not with answers, but with a reorientation of the heart. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and you no longer know what to expect from life. David asks, "But now, Lord, what do I look for?" This question matters more than any explanation, because when pain lasts too long, you stop asking why this happened and start asking, what am I supposed to hold on to now? This is the most dangerous moment emotionally, because if you place hope in the wrong place, the disappointment will be louder than the pain. This psalm is for when words no longer help and hope feels fragile. David answers his own question. My hope is in you. That's it. No poetry, no build-up, no emotional speech, just a sentence. Because real hope doesn't shout. It settles. This is not triumph. This is surrender without theatrics. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and even faith feels quiet. Today, this sounds like, I don't know how this will resolve. I don't feel strong. I don't even feel hopeful. But I choose where I place my weight, not in outcomes, not in timing, not in explanations, but in God's presence, inside the silence. Psalm 39 teaches this. Hope is not something you feel first. It's something you decide. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and decisions matter more than emotions. Save me from all my transgressions. Do not make me the score of fools. Notice something important. David is not asking for the pain to stop yet. He's asking not to be destroyed by it. Sometimes healing begins, not with relief, but with preservation. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and survival itself is the prayer. Then David says something unexpected. I was silent. I would not open my mouth, for you are the one who has done this. This is not resignation. This is trust and process. Not everything painful is punishment. Not everything heavy is rejection. Some seasons are simply shaping you in ways that cannot be rushed. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and resistance would only deepen the wound. When anxiety speaks, it says, fix this now. Psalm 39 answers, stay present. When exhaustion screams, I can't keep doing this. Psalm 39 whispers, you don't have to control it. This is not passivity. This is emotional honesty. You stop fighting reality and start trusting God inside it. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because control has become heavier than surrender. Sometimes silence is not avoidance. It's reverence. It's knowing that words would only cheapen the moment. David doesn't stop speaking forever. He stops speaking until his heart is aligned again. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and listening becomes the holiest act. If you've ever felt like your faith was quieter than your pain, stay, because Psalm 39 doesn't end in hope alone. It ends in vulnerability, in a request that is almost childlike, in a plea for relief, not triumph. And that's where the psalm becomes deeply human. Hope doesn't need volume, only direction. There's a kind of prayer that only comes after you stop pretending to be strong, not loud, not confident, almost hesitant. Psalm 39 reaches this point. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and even faith feels tired. David says, "Remove your scourge from me. I am overcome by the blow of your hand." This is not polite prayer language. This is honesty. It's the voice of someone who believes in God, but can no longer carry the weight alone. Notice this. David does not deny God's authority. He does not walk away. He stays and asks for relief. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and you finally admit, this is too much. Many people never reach this part because they've been taught that asking for relief is weakness, that real faith endures silently, that strong believers don't complain. Psalm 39 destroys that myth. David doesn't glorify suffering. He acknowledges it. There's a difference. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and silence has become painful instead of holy. When you rebuke and discipline anyone for their sin, you consume their wealth like a moth. Surely everyone is but a breath. This is not self-hatred. This is humility. David recognizes his limits. He understands how fragile he is, and instead of pretending otherwise, he brings that fragility to God. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because you've reached the edge of your strength. Spiritual exhaustion is real. It looks like praying without emotion, believing without energy, trusting without clarity, enduring without relief. And the most dangerous thought becomes, maybe I just need to push harder. Psalm 39 offers another path. Ask for mercy, not explanations, not control. Mercy. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and mercy feels more necessary than answers. Sometimes God doesn't remove the season immediately, but he does respond to honesty. Pretending strength delays healing. Confession opens space for grace. David is no longer managing his image here. He's exposed. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and image maintenance becomes unbearable. Then comes one of the most vulnerable lines. Hear my prayer, Lord. Listen to my cry for help. Do not be deaf to my weeping. This is not theology. This is relationship. David isn't arguing doctrine. He's asking to be heard. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and tears speak better than sentences. If you've ever prayed like this, God, I don't know what to say. God, I'm just tired. God, please see me. You're not failing spiritually. You're aligning with Psalm 39. God does not require eloquence. He responds to truth. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because truth has replaced performance. If you're still here, still listening, Psalm 39 has one final movement. Not despair, not triumph, but a gentle request for space, for breath, for restoration. And it's quieter than anything before. There comes a moment When you stop asking for explanations, you stop asking for timelines, you stop asking for guarantees, and what remains is something much smaller, but much more honest. Psalm 39 ends here, not with victory, not with answers, but with a request for space. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and all you want is room to breathe again. David says, "Look away from me, that I may enjoy life again before I depart and am no more." This line makes many people uncomfortable because it doesn't sound triumphant. It doesn't sound spiritual enough, but it is deeply human. David is not asking God to leave forever. He's asking for relief from intensity, for a pause, for a moment without pressure. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and intensity has lasted too long. This is not rejection of God. It's not loss of faith. It's the prayer of someone saying, "I need gentleness right now. I can't endure constant wait. I need a break." Psalm 39 gives you permission to pray that kind of prayer. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and endurance has become exhaustion. Today, this looks like too many thoughts, too much noise, too much expectation, too much self-control. You're not asking to escape life. You're asking for softness inside it. Psalm 39 acknowledges this need without shame. This psalm is for when words no longer help, because pressure has replaced peace. Rest is not giving up. Rest is refusing to destroy yourself. In the name of strength, David is not surrendering hope. He's protecting what little strength remains. There is wisdom in knowing when to stop pushing. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and survival requires rest. God does not measure faith by how much you can endure. He measures it by honesty. Psalm 39 ends, not because the pain is solved, but because the truth has been spoken. Silence is no longer oppression. It becomes peace. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and silence finally feels safe again. If you're listening to this at night, let it loop. If you're listening while tired, stay. Because Psalm 39 is not a one-time prayer. It's a companion for seasons when speaking feels impossible. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and that season lasts longer than expected. Take a breath in. Hold it gently. Release. You don't need to resolve anything right now. You're allowed to rest. Inside God's presence, something subtle happens. After everything has been said, not resolution, not clarity, but relief. Not because the problem disappeared, but because it no longer owns your breath. Psalm 39 lives here. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and silence finally stops hurting. There are two kinds of silence, one that compresses you, and one that holds you. At the beginning of Psalm 39, silence was restraint. At the end, silence becomes rest. Nothing changed externally, but everything shifted internally. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and silence becomes a place, not a prison. This is why Psalm 39 works so well when read slowly and more than once, because your mind needs repetition to believe what your heart already knows. You didn't imagine the exhaustion. You didn't exaggerate the weight. You weren't weak for feeling overwhelmed. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and reassurance must be gentle. Right now, wherever you are, you don't need to fix anything. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to explain yourself to anyone. Psalm 39 is not asking you to move forward. It's inviting you to stay. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and staying is already enough. Listen again, slowly. My hope is in you, not because you feel hopeful, not because the future looks clear, but because hope has direction now. Let that line sit with you. My hope is in you. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and a single sentence is enough. Your nervous system calms through familiarity, the voice, the pace, the truth repeated without urgency. That's why you're still here. And that's why this psalm stays with you, long after the sound fades. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and presence matters more than progress. If this psalm is speaking to you, without words, you don't need to explain why. Just type silent in the comments, not as an answer, as acknowledgement. Others reading it will understand. This psalm is for when words no longer help, even in the comment section. And if you feel like listening again, that's not avoidance. That's wisdom, because some psalms are not meant to be finished. They're meant to be returned to. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and that need doesn't disappear overnight. No shift in tone, just space. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are resting. There is peace. That doesn't come from answers. It comes from permission. Permission to stop searching. Permission to stop explaining. Permission to simply exist as you are. Psalm 39 ends here, not with certainty, but with space. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and arriving is no longer the goal. Notice something important. Nothing dramatic happens at the end of Psalm 39. No breakthrough, no reversal, no sudden clarity. And that's intentional, because sometimes the deepest healing happens without visible movement. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and stillness is already doing the work. The world tells you, move on, get over it, be strong, say something. Psalm 39 says, stay, breathe, listen, rest. Faith is not always action. Sometimes faith is restraint. Sometimes faith is silence. Sometimes faith is not adding anything else. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and restraint becomes reverence. By now, something subtle has shifted, not excitement, not motivation, but safety. You're no longer fighting the silence. You're no longer afraid of it. It's no longer full of pressure. It's full of presence. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and presence replaces performance. You don't need to remember every line. You don't need to understand every verse. The psalm has already done its work. It met you where language failed. That's enough. This psalm is for when words no longer help, and understanding is optional. If this video ends now, that's okay. If it loops back to the beginning, that's also okay. Because Psalm 39 is not meant to be consumed. It's meant to be returned to. Whenever silence feels heavy again, this psalm is for when words no longer help, and that season comes back more than once. No call to act, no instruction, no summary, just breath. In, out. You are not required to do anything else. If you stayed until the end, you don't need to comment. You don't need to like. You don't need to explain. But if you want to mark this moment, just leave a dot. Nothing more. Those who understand will understand. This psalm is for when words no longer help, even at the very end.